What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Things That Keep Me Up at Night podcast. Today, I'm putting on my time teller hat because we have a heavy hitter in the watch world as far as I'm concerned. And we were giggling just a second ago because this stunning woman in front of me, Kat, I've known for as long as I've been on Instagram, honestly, which is crazy. As long as
Same.
as long as I've had a wristwatch based Instagram page, we've been following each other, and I'm kind of ashamed to say this is the first time you and I are hearing each other's voices outside of like a recording.
I know it is pretty shameful, I will say.
And so it's the coolest thing is I've seen your business career collection flourish from just being someone kind of casually taking photos of wristwatches like myself to having your own media, right, with your podcast, and we're going to talk about that. And then now to being media production manager for Worn and Wound. And for the wristwatch aficionados out there, your antennas are already going up. Like Worn and Wound is a huge media entity in the horological sphere. So, Kat, how and what got you started? Yes. How are you here?
I know. I don't know. That's what I tell people. I'm just like, I have no idea. No, I mean, obviously, this whole watch thing, as you can probably agree, is like, it's so bizarre, so weird. I still have to like convince my family, like, this is a real thing, right, that I have a career in watches, because they're like, that doesn't make sense to anybody.
Right. It's the weird thing I get all the time is people that are like outside of the hobby will like come across my channel randomly, like from the recommendations or whatever, and they'll be like, there are watch channels? That's people so weirdly specific. And I'm like, wait, it's not really any more specific than anything else. But for some reason, I get this also with like family and friends. They're like, wait, he does what? He talks about watches? Like what?
Yeah, it's so bizarre. But to answer your question, I still don't know how I got here. I think a lot of hard work and a lot of hustling on the side, as I'm sure you are well aware of. And I'm not really sure your backstory, but I can only assume that you haven't had a full-time job if you don't now, and you're doing the time teller on the side. You were doing it in your free time, essentially. At least when you started, I would assume that was.
Yeah,
I
was making no money from the time teller brand or business at all for the good long while. Yeah,
it's crazy, and that's kind of what we did with the podcast. At the time, there was really no other women out there, either in the YouTube space or podcasting, besides like Kara from Houdinki, and that was kind of it. And then she was like hit or miss on their podcast sometimes. Right. So I thought, all right.
And so for people who don't know, we're talking about 10 and 2 media.
Oh yeah, that's thank you.
Yeah.
And so I had this grand idea of starting a podcast, and I wanted the co-host to be another woman, and it was just really hard to find someone. I was like, I know of a bunch of dudes that I could do this with, but I just really wanted another female voice. And lo and behold, there was another gal named Kat that lived in Nashville that worked in watches.
What are the chances?
I know. I met her at a Nashville Watch Club meetup, and she really didn't know at the time, but I was kind of like testing her out, and I was like, all right, let me see how the vibe is. Yeah, essentially. Yeah. And I asked her out like a weirdo for coffee, which I don't know what she thought I was going to ask her for, but we met and like we hit it off immediately, became best friends. And then, I was like, do you want to do this podcast? It's going to take up all your free time. You're going to hate it, but let's do it. And she said, yes. So we started this podcast, and really just spent every bit of our free time on it for a year. And then the pandemic hit, and I was furloughed from my job. I was working in physical therapy, and we were actually
to be up close and personal with people.
Yeah, right. Essentially. So it wasn't a bad thing. I was kind of glad to be furloughed, but during that time, we were both furloughed. We were both sitting at home, and we're like, all right, let's ramp this up. So we had the extra time in our hands. We did 2 episodes a week. We started messing around with video, and all these CEOs and officials from brands. They were all home and ready to talk. And so
Right.
yeah, the podcast just really, really took off. We got a couple sponsors, which, you know, it was nothing we ever sought out to do. We never wanted money for the podcast, but it was nice to have. And it was a nice, like, oh, you're putting all this hard work into this thing. Here's a couple of bucks, right?
Right. And you
And
have that
so
surreal realization, you're like, wait, I can get paid for this.
oh yeah, I probably should, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
might be nice. My husband was really, really happy when that happened. But no, and the whole reason I even picked up a camera was because of this podcast. I wanted to take better photos of the watches that we were getting in for review, and I had a friend show me around the camera a little bit, and yeah, that was it. And I just started taking photos like crazy. And then during the pandemic, again, just really tried to hone my craft and style, and it all just worked out. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. I am still pinching myself that I work for Worn and Wound, which it's just crazy.
And again, I think the majority of people listening to this podcast will immediately know who Worn and Wound is. If you don't, whenever you look up a review for a watch or an overview or any information about a watch, Worn and Wound has covered it. They're one of the biggest media entities in the wristwatch space. I use them as references. And so now to
So cool.
to see someone I know be part of that is incredible. And so, Kat, you touched upon something that I told Greg this when I was like, yo, we got to get her on the podcast. I was like, this is so precarious what I'm about to talk about.
Oh
and,
no.
and I hope that you appreciate how I'm trying to toe this line. Okay. So you are a woman in the watch world. Okay. What I don't want to do by bringing you on here is reducing you to just being a woman watch collector, because that doesn't matter. You're a watch collector, regardless of what you are. However, what is it like being a woman in the watch world? Like,
yeah,
it's insane, because the truth is, I look at my percentage when you look at like channel analytics or like KPIs with your social media following. For me, it fluctuates around like 3% at any time, female, right?
oh wow.
And when I think of like female followers, you're like the first person I think of. I'm like, Kat's a watch collector.
Oh.
And then like, who's the other one? Like my sister and my girlfriend. It's like, no.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around here. Do you feel a difference, like being a woman in the watch world? Do you feel it being a masculine dominant place? And what is it like navigating now Worn and Wound as a woman in this crazy watch world?
Yeah. So I would say my view as being a woman in this hobby, in this industry 3 years ago was a lot different than it is now, only because of social media. And it's changed so much, and there are so many more women out there, and I can pick up my phone right now and scroll through my feed, and there will be 2 or 3 photos of women watch collectors, which is great. When I first started, there was like no one, and I was like even deeper because I was like super into the forums and such, which there was like no women in there, like at all. So, and I will say, for the most part, my experience has been great, and you know, I have far more positive experiences than negative, which is awesome. But you know, to be honest, yeah, there's been times where both me and Catlin both have experienced negativity or mansplaining or whatever you want to call it towards us in the podcast. But as far as the collectors go, and the general Instagram, social media atmosphere, it's been really heartwarming. And I think the general vibe is like, guys want more women in the hobby. And so I'm always encouraging.
Personally, as a man, I want more people, like period, to join this hobby, because I think when people make the argument like, oh, you know, the wristwatch wearers are a dying breed, that kind of pisses me off, because I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. This is like the best thing ever. It changed my life. Like, watch collecting is awesome. And so with more men coming into the hobby, of course I want more women coming in the hobby, because I think that if the watch world as in like marketers and manufacturers, see more women becoming involved, it will force them to be more accommodating and more competitive with what they offer. Because I don't know about you, we're going to talk specifics in a moment. Because what's funny is I see you taking pictures and wearing a lot of the watches that I'm like really, really into. So I feel like you and I have similar tastes.
I think we do, definitely.
But what kind of bothers me, and I know for a fact, like Connie, my significant other, is that like there will be a really cool guy's watch, right? And then you go to any watchmaker, you just pick one, and then you go to their like female catalog, and it's always this kind of like weird fanciful thing with some like bedazzled like case, and like it's like, wait, how? And even Connie asked me, she's like, wait, why can't I get like that cool one, but just like maybe a little smaller for me? Exactly. And I don't have a good, there is no good reason. The only reason is that like I think the latest market research is that women make up less than like 30% of buyers in the watch world. So they're not going to, manufacturers aren't going to spend the money to R&D and design and put out female variants of their male watches. But you, I see crushing it with quote male watches that like I personally would wear.
Yeah, that was a hard barrier for me, honestly, because when I first started wearing mechanical watches, they were all quote unquote men's watches that were, you know, online. And to go into an AD and or boutique and like immediately they would take you like, oh, come over here and look at these ladies' watches, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, no, I want to go look at this Tudor or, you know, this Breitling or whatever. And it was just, and then you still get that today. And I think that's the barrier. And like, you're never going to break that. Brands are never going to break that without reaching out. And there are some brands that are doing really well with this. A lot of brands aren't still, and it's still something that they're just so behind on. And what I really don't understand is like, you know, you talked about the 30% a second ago, but there's this statement that I hear over and over again, women, you know, they just don't care about watches as much. When I look around, like every freaking woman I see out there is wearing an Apple Watch. You can't tell me a woman doesn't want a tool on her wrist. They're wearing them. Yeah, they're wearing them now, whether it's like a Garmin or an Apple Watch or G-Shock. Like women want the same tools that guys do. You know, maybe we want different colors, maybe we want brighter colors, but we want them,
maybe different dimensions, but you still want them functional. You still want them like cool. You know what I mean? Exactly. So you touched upon something that I actually didn't even think to ask. Who do you think out of the brands, and this is Kat speaking, she's not, her opinions do not reflect Worn and Wound. Who, as far as watchmakers go, do you think is doing it well as far as being like accommodating to women? And who do you think you would like to see pick it up a bit?
Yeah. So I think who's doing it well, Breitling, I think is killing it right now. They just released the Super Oceans, which I have my name on one for a 42 millimeter model because I want the bigger one. But they made all these great sizes, and they got a 36 and they got a 42 and they got a 46. It's like every size you want, a lot of colors, like you have the option, pick your poison, whether you're a guy or a woman, like it doesn't matter. And it's like, that's what I want to see. And their advertisements are, the women aren't just wearing the 36 millimeters, they're wearing the bigger ones too. And then the guys are wearing smaller. It's like, that's what it's all about.
I was gonna jump in here. I am a bigger dude. I have just under 8-inch wrists, and I prefer sub 40 millimeter watches. I'm not wearing one now. I'm wearing the Tuna, by the way. Kat, what do you have on the wrist today?
I've got the Rolex Submariner, so a 41 millimeter.
Okay. So neither of us are within what I consider to be the sweet spot. But the thing is that like when I hear a big name brand release a watch sub 40, I get super excited, and I'm a big dude. So there's no reason why rules can't be broken. There really aren't any rules. So okay, Breitling is doing a good job. Who else? If there's another example.
Honestly, just thinking about the sub, like I think Rolex, they do market well. If you go to their Instagram page, their social media, they have women wearing subs and women wearing, you know, a Daytona, and that's what I like to see. And it's just like, I just want to see variety. I'm not saying that one should be marketed on male or female's wrist. I just think that like just put a variety of advertisements out there for both, and so that a woman knows when she goes to an AD, like she can ask for that watch and not
Right.
feel like, oh, this is a guy's watch,
Right.
I love brands that do give that variety, and Rolex does it well.
And they also have like a dedicated female catalog. So on top of them marketing the quote like flagship models, they're also offering like dedicated, ladies date justs and
that's true.
things like
Forgot
that.
about that. Yeah.
So
that's not even on my radar, so I don't even think about, but
exactly.
that's a good point.
and I don't blame you, because the truth is, like, I think that women should just be able to wear the cool watches. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think there needs to be a dedicated catalog. However, one qualm that I have is actually with Seiko, and I'm wearing a Seiko right now.
Yeah,
I really
Seiko.
enjoy Seiko. They've been doing certain things with business restructuring and reference number changes with them trying to clearly get more brand equity and push up as far as like price point goes. But one thing that bothers me is they are kind of one of the offenders I was talking about, where it's like they have a bunch of really cool watches, and then you look at, like, if you type in like women's Seiko, it's a bunch of these weird like bedazzled things, and it's
it's like, or the Presage, or like it's like the dressier pieces.
Right.
Now that you say that, I don't think I've ever seen a Seiko advertisement. Oh, maybe for a Seiko 5, actually, I have seen it on a woman, but like the GMTs or the SSKs or SKX, like I don't think I've seen advertisement.
Or even the Alpinist. I know for a fact my girl could pull off an Alpinist, like for sure. And so I just wish that more accessible brands, like, because you mentioned Breitling and Rolex.
And Rolex. I know that.
And that's
very
great.
expensive.
That's great. However, those are, pricier watches for the majority of collectors, I will say. And it would be very, very nice for more accessible brands to offer things that are accommodating for both sexes, that like are still cool. Like, women don't deserve like a dumbed down flashy version of a watch just because they're the gentler sex. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
let's put a quartz movement in it. Let's make it pink. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah. So who would you like? Because I kind of answered my question. So you gave me 2 examples of who does it well. I complained about Seiko. Who would you like to see kind of pick it up a bit?
Yeah, no, I think Seiko was probably going to be my answer, because I am such a Seiko fan, and have many. I have an Alpinist and I've got a Turtle, and I would love to see them market those types of watches on women a little bit more than they do. And hopefully, with my place in the watch world now, I can start to do that on my own. But I would like to see it come from the brand too.
Totally. So okay, when it comes to collecting, and this is, again, every human, regardless of gender, has a different philosophy on collecting. But I can only speak for me and how I feel, and me being a man. Do you think women approach collecting differently?
I think so. I think the majority of women do. And again, and I can't speak for a lot of women either, because between me and even say Catlin, like our philosophies are different. But I do think that men probably have a different, it's really hard to say. Because I really have no philosophy, to be honest with you. I just like what I like, and I buy and I flip and I do whatever. I have like, there's no process really involved, other than like, I like this shiny thing. And I want to buy it.
There's no logic. There's no logic within the hobby. Yeah.
No, I mean, I have a dream of like, oh yeah, this will be a great watch to hand down to a kid one day, or whatever. But I don't live by that necessarily.
Right.
I think in my mind, for men, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, men have this mindset of legacy, right? You have it with your last name, you have it with marriage, with kids, and I feel like a watch is kind of part of that, like a legacy. It's something to leave. And I feel like maybe guys have that more than women do. I could be wrong, but I that's kind of like my perspective, because I hear that a lot with guys, like they want to hand their watches down to their kids, or
And I've been handed down multiple pieces from my dad, from my
that's
grandpa
awesome.
or my great
That's
grandpa.
amazing.
So yeah, I do. Yeah, there's truth to what you say.
Okay. I was hoping I wasn't missing the mark completely.
No.
Well, what do you think? Well, what's your perspective on it?
Well, I can't speak for women.
Yeah.
But I do, when I buy things, I am much like you actually, where there really is no logic to my collection. I find that my interests are very cyclical, so I will go through phases. And for any of my viewers who've been following me for like any length of time, that there are just look at the episodes I put out, and you're like, oh, he must be still in like this field watch phase, or he must like really be into G-Shocks right now, or he is really into divers, or wow, he's done a few chronograph episodes recently. So it's like sometimes I will be really, really focused on a specific complication, and then I'll consume as much information possible about who is producing watches utilizing that complication.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, I went through this weird phase where I was obsessed with white gold. And I don't have a white gold watch. Still to this day, I don't have a white gold watch, but I was like consuming as much information possible, finding out who's producing white gold watches and what kind of sampling is there to choose from. And so all of this is to say, I kind of just end up purchasing what I like.
Yeah.
However, I do just assume that all of my watches will be my kids someday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I
guess there is that legacy.
For sure. I like the idea as well. And I think, I do think we're very similar in how we collect. And for me, it's so impulsive. And you mentioned something of like researching, and I tend to do that too. I tend to go down like these rabbit holes when there's something I really like, and I enjoy it so much. I love the hunt. Like the hunt is like the best part. And then you get to watch and it's great, but you either connect with it or you don't. And you know immediately. And then it's like, all right, sell this, off to the next.
What's one watch that you maybe weren't necessarily, I don't want to use the word underwhelmed, but which watch did you lust after? And then once you got it in the metal, you were like, I'm going to probably let this one go.
Oof. I think recently, and oh, this is going to hurt a lot of people for me to say. I bought the No Time to Die Seamaster, the Bond, the new Bond, it's titanium.
Right.
And it was really cool. It was such a cool watch, but I just didn't bond with it. Bond. That's
good one. I
no pun intended.
On purpose.
Yeah. No pun intended. So cheesy, but there was just, it didn't click for me, and it was an amazing watch and really could go head to head with the Submariner for sure. And I see why so many people love it, but I put it on my wrist and I was just like, I don't know. It just, I didn't click with it. And I think I had it for maybe a month, I think, and then I kind of sold it and moved on. But yeah, that's something recent.
There was a Grand Seiko that you had.
Pretty much every Grand Seiko I've ever had. And I hate saying that because I love that brand so much. They are phenomenal. But every time I buy one,
and you made a post about it, and it kind of blew me away. What was it? We're referring to a watch that you weren't necessarily impressed by, or what? What was the issue?
Well, I've owned the GMT. I think it's the SBGM 221. I've owned the recent pink dial SBG W289, the 36.5 millimeter watch, which again just didn't really click with me. And I think to me, I am such a sports watch. Like I love a sporty diver. Like that's just who I am. I can't help it. Like
nothing wrong with that.
That is all I want in my collection is just freaking dive watches, right? Yeah. And I look at Grand Seiko. They're easy to wear, and they're so tough, and they can handle, and they're useful. And I look at Grand Seiko and I just fall in love with these watches, and then I buy them, and then I'm like, I never want to wear you. You're so precious. Like, and that's just how it goes every single time. Yeah. And I hate that. And maybe one day they'll make the diver of my dreams. And I hope so. I'm holding out for it.
It's easier to get a nick on your Submariner.
Yeah.
And then you're like, it's a sub. And even though the sub is technically harder to get than like a Grand Seiko, you're like, this Zaratsu finishing, I do not want to put a nick on this thing.
It feels so bad. Yeah, it feels so bad when you scratch a Grand Seiko. It's terrible.
So would you consider yourself, because I don't know personally, would you consider yourself what I call a serial flipper?
Oh, probably so. I think I hate that term, but like it's the truth. I hate it because it's true.
Yeah. So
yeah, I changed my mind a lot. I want to try everything. Look, YOLO, you only live once. I want to try as many watches as possible before I'm gone.
Right. And I don't blame you. I mean, I am not, by the way. So I just want to get that clear. My audience knows that for some reason I buy things and then like it will take a lot for me to sell it, because I think I'm like so picky about what I choose to buy in the first place that typically when I get it, I'm like, yep. However, with the Jazzmaster, and this was like early on in the time. This was like the first year. I think this was 2017. I got the Hamilton Jazzmaster Open Heart, and it was my first open heart watch. And I thought it was like gorgeous. And I looked at all the media photos and the renders and like macro footage on it. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love it. Like really smooth sweep, this and that. And then once I unboxed it and I put it on the wrist, I think I wore it for like that evening. And then I was like, it just, I literally put it in my watch box and I don't think I picked it up for another like 2 months. And then I made a bunch of episodes on it. And then I was like, this is like such a beautiful watch. I don't like it any less. I just don't wear it. Yeah. So I sell it. And what's funny is that like, I'm a watch dealer. I source watches for people. I sell watches at the Time Teller shop, shameless plug. But I don't consider myself personally a flipper because I guess I'm just so dang picky.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, when you bought this watch, this Jazzmaster, were you already like collecting hardcore at that point, or were you just kind of getting into the hobby?
I mean, I was pretty deep into it, honestly, but it was my, I was experimenting new things, honestly. I think that this wasn't like my first entry into the hobby.
Yeah.
But it was when I was it was like a formative time when I started the channel and I was like taking more risks with what I wanted to try for myself. So this was like the first rose gold toned case I ever like purchased, and I don't think I've ever owned one since. It was my first open heart. It was my first Hamilton that wasn't vintage.
Okay. Wow.
And so all of these things, and again, the build quality was fine. It wasn't the nicest finished watch. Like it's not Longa level finishing. It's not Grand Seiko, but had a good movement. It was beautiful. It was finished well enough. And I just didn't wear it.
Yeah.
So what's one watch you found that you just could not wear?
I think I've probably bought a couple of vintage watches back in the day. And I asked you that because when I first started collecting, it was around that time, 2017, 2018, I just bought a shit ton of watches, to be honest with you. And I was just like figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like, because I live in Nashville. There's not a lot of watch stores here. Like we're not a watch town. And so I had to buy online, and I just started buying stuff, and I didn't go crazy, but like I would buy it, and just for financial reasons, if I didn't like it, I would sell it to buy something else.
Right. Makes sense.
And
practical.
Yeah. And saved me from having to get a divorce, which is nice, right? I did it for my husband. Otherwise, I would just buy all I want. No, we have to put food on the table. But I just bought so many watches, and there was a lot of vintage pieces that I bought, Hamiltons and some Belovas, and those pieces I was immediately like, oof, I can't wear this. Like, it's just, I feel like I have to be so careful with it, and that's just not my style. And so they wouldn't last a day, but they were nice. And again, I figured out what I liked over that period of time. I did spend money. And you definitely lose when you have to flip, like you have to pay,
right.
Like
Unless
you lose the value, you lose, shipping cost, PayPal fees, all that kind of stuff kind of comes into play. But I was never really in it for the money, but more for the experience.
Right. And I think that's how, like, this actually is a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about. what is, you know, what was the most difficult transition, and what is the thing that you noticed really changed when you went from, because you said you weren't in it for the money, you were just in it for the experience.
Yeah.
Something definitely does change when you go from just being a hobbyist to being a content creator on a hobby, right?
Yeah.
So what was the most difficult thing within that transition? And what was like the most stunning example of like, okay, I'm like in this. This is like different.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I don't know. I think I changed because when we had the podcast, I was obviously open with watches that I had purchased, would talk about them on the show for content.
Mhm.
And I would start to feel bad for flipping a watch, not for me, but like because I'm like, oh my gosh, all these people are going to judge me. And then 2 weeks later, I'd flip another watch, and it started to get to me, to be honest. And then we would get
Right.
comments, "Cat the Flipper," and like all this shit. And so
I was
it
not
got
aware
to
of
me.
that when I called you a flipper, by the way. I was
No,
not
no,
aware.
no, 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 no. It's fine. I take no offense to it. Like it's true. And I think the term flipper, it's so divisive in our world because like you have like flippers out there trying to make money. These people that
Mhm.
are reselling, Rolex and Pateks, and we hate those people, right? We don't
Right.
like those people. And so I didn't want to be associated with that term. But I think that's what got to me so much because I was like, yeah, I'm flipping, but
Right.
not for those same reasons. So yeah, people would call me out and stuff. And I slowed down. I slowed my roll a lot. And I do it now, but I do it a little bit more infrequently.
Right. So when it comes to the content creation side and speaking your mind on topics, I'm kind of immune to any backlash that I receive because I receive so much of it because I'm like incredibly outspoken.
Dude, you are so good about that. Cause like yeah.
You just, I mean, the longer you do it, but you just need to learn quickly that's like you're not going to please everyone. So it's
Yeah.
like I better just make the content that I enjoy, and certainly some people will enjoy it too. And then that's, I make the content for those guys.
Yeah.
So, or gals, guys and gals, but
can't forget that 3%.
Exactly. So jokes aside though, what have you dealt with as far as the negativity goes, and how do you deal with it? Because
yeah,
I really think you being here is super valuable, not only to someone who might be apprehensive at starting into this hobby, but you have a very unique take, being a woman who's already a minority in this hobby, and as a content creator. So
yeah.
what would you tell someone um that might be getting into this? Like, how do you deal with the negativity? What kind of negativity do you get, and what would you tell?
I think for me, I would tell people, women especially, like you don't have to know everything. And that was really hard for me and Catlin, like the amount of research we would do before just recording a podcast, because we felt like you get scrutinized a little bit more, I think, as a woman, especially. And we would get emails and DMs about like, oh, you said this was a 41 millimeter. Actually, it's a 40 millimeter. And you're like, okay, thanks. Like sometimes you just misspeak, right? It's like
Right.
not a big deal. And the amount of people that like would go out of their way to send an email about something so minute, something that just does not matter. It was just very shocking to me. But like you said, you get over it over time, and you grow a thicker skin, and eventually it doesn't bother you anymore. It did in the beginning, and you just have to brush it off. And you're like, okay, this is not going to stop me from doing what we're doing. We're still putting out really good content. This is something super small. And I would just say, don't feel like you have to know everything. You don't. Just go out and create. That's the most important thing. Be consistent, do the work, and like it will show itself eventually, because like it just don't get bogged down by the people that tell you like you don't know enough. Because I still don't know enough. Like the amount of watch knowledge I do not know at this point is crazy. In fact, I probably know less now because
You know less now because you experience more. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
The pool just got so much larger, so you realize what you like. You now know what you don't know.
But I don't know about you, Jory, but like when we got into the hobby and we started doing, or not the hobby, but the industry with the podcast, I stopped listening to other podcasts. I stopped reading articles on Worn and Wound and Houdinki and everyone else because we didn't want to be influenced by them because we were creating our own stuff.
Right.
And I don't know, I would say you're probably the same way. And so you do stop learning as much because you're not intaking all that information anymore.
Well, it has been a little bit different for me. One reason I absolutely love the job that I have as far as content creation is that it has actually forced me to immerse myself deeper into a hobby that I love. However, speaking to your point, although I use Houdinki, Worn and Wound, monochrome watches, and other watch YouTubers as references, I definitely don't partake in that kind of media as much as my viewers might think. When they ask me who's your favorite watch YouTuber or who's your favorite media site, it's very difficult to say because it's not that I personally don't want to be influenced by them. It's that I'm so busy working on my own content as you are with your own, that it's just very difficult for me to sit down and be like, oh, Jody uploaded a new episode. It's not that I don't want to support Jody from Just One More Watch. By the way, he is my favorite watch YouTuber.
Shout out.
And by the way, he said he wants to be on the podcast, so that's something to look forward to.
That's cool.
So it's like no harm, no foul. I don't expect them to watch every single one of my episodes.
No,
and the truth is, as long as I have this, and it might be a fanciful, naive belief, but I think when one of us does well, we all do well because it's bringing more people into the hobby, and it connects more people to you who will eventually be connected with me and this and that. So any of this, I don't know if you've experienced this, Kat, but one thing that I get all the time is like this pseudo drama. They want, they want drama within like the watch YouTubers or like the content writers or this or that. And it's like, dude, I don't know who you think we are, but we're not like the Logan Paul, like front page family channels that like are just full of that stuff, like manufactured artificial drama for the sake of clicks. Like the one thing I truly love about the watch world is that the people that are producing the content actually truly like they are in this hobby. You know what I mean? Like they love the hobby.
Totally.
So, I doubt that you've experienced any drama. I really have not experienced much drama, but
very little. Yeah.
But what would you think is the hardest part now in your career as a content creator?
Oof, I think it is offering something to the audience that no one else is, right? And that's and to your point earlier, I think we are all a little bit different in our content and our channels and whatever you want to call it. Like you go to Houdinki for Houdinki, you go to Worn and Wound for Worn and Wound, you go to your Time Teller for Time Teller. Like everyone has their own niche within this big niche of a hobby. And like I think there's room for everybody, but like it is because we all come up with the same ideas, like they're just watches. So eventually, we're all going to come up with the same shit. And it's like, how do we be a little different? And then you do something different and then someone else does it. And you're like, well, damn, did they copy off of us or did they just come up? And because there's been so many times that like we did something that someone else did, but we didn't copy them. It was just that we had the same idea. And again, I think it's just, you have so many people in rooms now coming up with ideas and concepts that, two people are going to come up with the same thing. It's just bound to happen. Right. And so I think that's really hard as a struggle to be different. But I think with Worn and Wound, it's really great because they have such a strong voice. And I can play to that, and they already have their place in this, this industry. Versus 10 and 2, we were still trying to like figure ourselves out and where we stood. But it's a little easier at Worn and Wound for sure.
So, you mentioned your husband, and we are getting personal now.
Ooh,
is he also a degenerate watch addict like us? Or really,
he could care less about watches. He has like I've given him some really, really nice watches, and he just wants to wear his G-Shock all the
just
time.
leaves it on the nightstand. Like, sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So I've given up. I will never buy him another watch. He has like 4 or 5 at this point. But no, he's such a practical guy that he just doesn't understand why I would want to spend more than like $200 on a watch. So
this is like shocking for me to hear, because if my girl was like, yo, I just put my name down for a watch, I'd be like, heck yes, versus her being like, I want this bag. Because I'm like, what is a bag? Like, who cares about a bag? So if my significant other was stoked about watches, she's getting into it. She wears an Orient Stella. Ooh. And she has a couple vintage Omegas.
That's really cool.
She's getting her, it only took 7 years of us being together for her to get her feet wet. But she's just, it's funny. Some people just don't, they're not, I guess, bitten by the watch bug, and that's fine.
Yeah. No, I love getting his opinions though. And I'll show him a watch that maybe I'm interested in or just came out. And it's just so funny, like hearing someone that's just like, yeah, I guess that's okay. And it's like a watch that's like phenomenal. And I'm just like, it really brings me down to earth a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when my girl asks me to choose between, she used to do this all the time with nail polish colors, right? And I see like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, right? So she'll show me 2 things that like look purple, and I'll be like, well, they're both purple. And she's like, no, you don't understand. There's actually an undertone of like blah 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 blah, and it's like way over my head. And it's so true, because when I show her like a Longa Datograph perpetual tourbillon with the salmon dial and white gold case, I'm like, you don't understand. When you pull over the movement, you can see that there's almost 300 components and blah, 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 blah. And she's just like, there's like a couple hands and some numbers on the dial, and I think I see like a moon on it. I guess it's cool. Pink's cool. And so then I'll be like, no, you don't get it. But that's just it. They don't get it, and they don't have to. And that's perfectly fine.
No, it's totally fine. It makes me laugh. I think the other day I was wearing, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, I was wearing my Speedmaster, my Mark II Speedmaster, and my husband was like, "Oh, is that your Seiko?" And I was just like,
"You were like,
how dare you?
How dare you?" So
it's fine.
So which watches? You don't have to give me. You don't. Please, if you could give our listeners a peek behind the curtain.
Okay.
Which watches, give me 2 that you are interested in for your personal collection, or at least getting your hands on.
Like right now?
Yeah. What's on your radar?
Oh, so definitely that Breitling Super Ocean.
Okay.
I have my name down. I say I have my name down because I want the Kelly Slater. It's the like limited Surfer edition. Yeah. It's got the orange dial and it comes on the green rubber strap, which I'm really into. Cool. So that's a definite want. And I don't know. The only other watch that really I can think of right now is I want one of these new SSK GMTs from Seiko. And I don't know I can't decide which color. I think I want the orange because I was super into the orange SKX like back in the day.
Yeah, the
pumpkin. But there's like but there's like something about the GMT that I don't know. It's just not clicking. So I might go for like the
GMT hand.
Maybe.
I don't know what other color.
I might go with the black one.
But yeah, the black one looks nice. The black one's like the standout in my opinion.
Yeah, I really want one. Seiko is just like, there's always an endless list of Seikos that I want for sure.
Still.
I know. And that's the great thing about this hobby is like, yeah, I could have a Rolex in my collection and an IWC and all these other watches, and I still want all the Seikos because they're cool.
Nothing wrong with that. I just wish that they were a bit more accessible and less. Yeah.
They're getting up there. They're getting up there.
They're getting up there. It's not the heyday of like 2016, 2017 anymore. I
know. I think I paid like less than $150 for the SKX that I had when I first got in the hobby.
Same.
And now
with the bracelet.
Yeah.
Brand new.
With the Jubilee. Yeah.
And my girl got me my Sarbo 17 Alpinist for like $325 brand new.
Wow.
I have to like whisper that because now it's like people are trying to sell them for like $1,000. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Like the green?
Yeah, the green. I'm like, do you know how many of these they made? They made like bajillions of these. These are not rare.
Yeah.
These are not rare.
I didn't know that.
Dude,
Wow.
it is so dumb. It is so dumb. But so Kat,
Yeah.
what would, and again, not trying to reduce you to being a woman, but you are number one. Actually, you know what, Greg, let's give her a round of applause. You're the first female we've had on the podcast. So
Oh,
I just want
well,
to
thanks,
say
guys.
thank you. But also you are
honored.
one of the only female watch collectors that I personally have access to. So I want your opinion. When we look at the watch world as a whole, where would you like to see it go?
Yeah, I think inclusivity right now is a big thing for me. I think a lot of brands, and these are brands outside of, Rolex and Patek and stuff, everyone's hopping on this like exclusive train. And I am not about that at all. And everyone wants like an LE or you got to get on the list for this. You're seeing it with the freaking moon swatches now. And it's just like, it's so crazy to me. It's so crazy. And I'm just like, I'm really over it. I'm super over it. This hobby is supposed to be for everybody, and it's not for everybody right now. And that sucks. So if anything like that, put aside like women's watches and all that other crap. Like I just want more availability from watch brands right now. I want to be able to go into an AD, look at these watches and buy them. And it's getting harder and harder with these like mid-tier to luxury brands. And even some of like the lower end brands, micro brands even are getting that way. And it's just like, it's so crazy to me right now.
Yeah. And you are spot on in your assessment of that. It is insane. It seems regardless of price point, things are becoming more difficult.
Yeah,
so
it is.
And things are wrong when you go to a Rolex AD and they have like a Smurf, like they have a white gold option, but they don't have any stainless steel. And it's like, wait, hold on. Like it's supposed to be the other way around.
It is. And I will say to that point, we, not necessarily us, but like the watch community plays into that because you have so many people in this hobby that are going out there and buying these watches and either hoarding them or they're reselling them. So they're part of the problem.
I don't know if you saw, it might've been like 3 weeks ago by now, but some random collector out of Asia, I think, just sold 5 or 6 brand new Hulks on the market.
Oh, wow.
And people are like, oh, this is like what
this is the problem
has happened. Yeah. This is like a perfect example. And the funny part is that he probably took a hit on those, actually.
I would hope so. I hope everyone that like scooped up inventory is like shitting themselves right now, basically, because
markets. Are you seeing that?
I am seeing it. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I recently kind of purged a lot of my collection, and granted, I didn't have anything like super high value, but I am sitting on several pieces waiting to sell them because like I think that things are slowing down. People are holding their money now, and they're not as willing to spend, especially with what's going on in our economy. So I kind of laugh. Yeah, I'm happy about it. I hope they suffer. So much.
It's annoying because there's people like us and like who I feel most of our viewers and listeners are, who are in the hobby because they want the watches, they want to learn about the watches, they want to collect, and then some of these people are just taking advantage of this inaccessibility and making it worse as a whole. But so inclusivity, I'll agree with you on this one. So Kat, I ask everyone, we've been here for almost an hour talking to each other, by the way. It's funny because you're exactly how, like, I feel like I know you because number one, we've been following each other forever, but because I've been listening to you for so long, that's like, oh yeah, this is Kat. I ask every one of my guests this very hard-hitting question. Doesn't have to do with what we were talking about today. Doesn't have to do with watches, being a woman, and none of that. If this is the last recording you ever make, God willing, it won't be. What advice would you give to the listener? We've literally had someone say, eat your vegetables. So like, I will leave the mic to you.
I feel like I'm going to get really cheesy and just say, like, don't stop chasing your dream. And I say that because I worked in physical therapy, and now I work for like one of the biggest watch media companies, and it was a passion of mine, and who'd ever thought I would be here? And yeah, if there's something that you want, like just chase after it, like for sure.
Amen. So
Cool.
Kat, what projects do you have in the future? What would you like to pitch, and where can my people find you?
They can find me on Instagram, Cat Shoulders, pretty easy. And on Worn and Wound, you'll see me here and there, videos, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And I'm more behind the scenes now with production, but we have so much that we're working on, some really cool stuff. Anything that I could share would be like Wind Up. Come to Wind Up. Come to the Wind Up event, October in New York, same weekend as Watch Time. So there's going to be so many watch people in town. It is such a blast, and it's like it's such a fun experience getting to talk to people that are into this very, very weird thing that we're into.
It is strange.
I'm like trying to drag my husband. He's never been to one, and when I tell him, I'm like, babe, like there's like thousands of people that came, and he's like, I don't get it. So I'm trying to get him to come.
Comic-Con for like watch nerds.
It totally is like a Comic-Con. But there's so many brands. New York this year is going to be our biggest yet, and yeah, I'm so excited. So if you can make it out to one of those, definitely try.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you'll be one of the first people I tell, so you may just see me at Wind Up, guys. Who knows?
Come out. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, Kat, thank you so much. Again, one of the co-hosts of 10 and 2 Media, now media production manager at Worn and Wound, only on to bigger and better. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me on. I had a great time.
So guys, please check her out on Instagram at Cat Shoulders. We will leave links to Worn and Wound. We will leave links to her social media and her podcast in the description of the podcast and the YouTube channel. We're also going to be doing a little teaser over on the Time Teller channel about this. You already know where to find me. Guys, this is not monetized as of yet. Kat knows the struggle of getting podcasts monetized. So if you want to support us, please watch the visuals on YouTube, because that'll help us get monetized. And also follow us on Patreon, link in the description below. We will catch you on the next one. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay blessed. I love you guys.